let's move on a little bit about, I suppose, about the future. What are your? I mean, maybe you've already answered that, but I'll answer anyway. What are your hopes and prayers for us as a church? In the, I suppose, over the next 6 months, and then maybe over a few years. What
Sure.
how would you answer that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the short answer is to say that I'd love to see St Barnabas thriving and
Mm,
flourishing as a church. I would love to see people growing in their faith, in their willingness to gladly and joyfully serve Jesus Christ wherever they are and wherever they've been called to be. And I'd love to see people joining the church and the
mm,
church growing. So growing kind of spiritually, also growing numerically. That's my prayer. That's my hope. That's what I'd love to see.
mhm,
I mean, I'm aware that there has been a bit of a conversation around, maybe particularly during the vacancy, around the kind of vision of the church and whether that initial commitment to creative communities is still there, and whether the kind of developing families ministry has maybe ought to shift our focus and that kind of thing. I'm aware that's been a bit of a conversation. Does that sound right, Angus? Have you picked that
Yeah,
up?
I think definitely, and even though we're a relatively small church, we're probably more diverse than we might look at first glance, and certainly in terms of finding a vision that everyone feels they fit in with and suits them and they can get on board with. Because obviously, if you don't if you're a single person, a family's ministry doesn't necessarily interest and engage you.
Sure. Yeah,
all,
yeah,
all
sure.
this all this sort of stuff is,
Sure.
I don't think there's, I mean, I wouldn't speak for anyone. I don't think any of this stuff has ever been resolved in a way that feels as what you were talking earlier about, having a unity of purpose, and that's
Sure. Yeah, yeah.
well,
Yeah,
certainly going to be a thing that we'll need to work through.
sure. Well, let me say one thing at this stage. I think that's an important conversation, but I think there's a prior conversation, or something else that we need to work out before that, which is simply this: that um, I think, and I'm not saying, again, I'm not saying that this is missing, but it's something that we need to be sure of before even we think about the vision, and that is our confidence really in the gospel? Are we really kind of persuaded that, as Paul describes it, I guess in Romans 1, that the gospel is God's power to save people? Now that sounds like an obvious thing to say, and surely everyone's kind of agreed with that and on board with that. But I think that's something, a prior commitment that we need to have in place before even we have that conversation about what's our kind of strategy or vision. I think we need to have that kind of commitment clear in our heads before we begin thinking about, okay, so what does it mean for where we are at the moment? So I'm not going to necessarily solve that kind of where's our vision at the moment for now. I mean, I don't have a kind of master plan to unravel in the next couple of minutes. I think what I'd say is that I think it's an important conversation, but it's not the most important conversation. And I think where I'd love to see us, maybe in the next kind of 5 years or so, something that I'm going to be praying towards at least, is that I know one of the conversations has been around, do we want to, move to the morning congregation rather than the afternoon? And what would that say about us if we did that? My prayer is that we would grow to the point where we're able to have 2 services on a Sunday as one congregation, and that we are able to serve both families, and even families who reach a point of saying, actually, a Sunday afternoon is much better for us because we've got loads of kids' commitments on a Sunday morning, and people who aren't in families, who are singles, who may want a morning because actually Sunday morning works much better for them, or may want a Sunday afternoon. I'd love us to get to a point whereby we've grown so that we think actually we can start a morning congregation and sustain a morning congregation, so that we've got two going. That may not be something for the next 6 months. That may be a 5-year kind of thing, but I'd love us to get to that point.
I suppose on that, just one question, we've got quite a specific question someone messaged in. Why do you think the HTB plant Hackney Church is so successful at attracting and retaining more people? And do you think there's anything we can learn from them?
Yeah, wow.
Short of getting a brewery, you know.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, great question. I think it's and there are always things that you can learn from what other churches are doing, right? I think that's got to be the case. However much we might think that's not necessarily where I would see myself necessarily, there are things you can learn. I think one of the things about the kind of HTB network and the churches that are kind of part of the HTB universe is that they have got a very strong sense of who they are and what they do. I don't mean this, I mean this, what I'm about to say, in the best and literal sense rather than a pejorative sense. They've got a very strong corporate identity. So you go along to Hackney Church, you know what you're going to get. There's no kind of, there's no kind of question mark over, what's it going to be like, and what are we going to experience when we get there. You kind of know what it's going to be, and they are very, very good at what they do. So I think there's something just about that it ought to make us think, what do people know of St Barnabas Dalston? What do they think of us, if anything? What are we known for? Now, that's not to say that I think we need to have that same sense of corporate identity, because there are some people who find a very strong sense of corporate identity quite distancing. Some people kind of go along to that and think, oh, actually, we need a bit more space here to kind of be ourselves, but not in this way. And if this is the only thing that's on offer, then actually that's not really kind of where we're at. So I'm not saying I think we need to just copy what Hackney Church are doing, but I think maybe there is something there that just ought to make us ponder and reflect a bit.
Okay. And I suppose another question related to growth is, if you were to walk into St Barnabas, it's quite white and it doesn't necessarily reflect Hackney as a whole. And is there anything in particular we can do, to just look a bit more like Hackney, a bit, to have more BAME people there? Is that, is that a thing?
I think that's a really, really helpful question. And I guess particularly, I mean, the way that I have just, the way that it's kind of been asked in my head has just been walking around the streets, and particularly those estates nearby the church, and just thinking, what would it look like? I mean, I know that some people are involved in a kind of Saturday group, went out onto the estates, but I could just kind of think, what would it look like for people from those estates to come into St Barnabas? And what would it look like for us to serve people, who are our immediate neighbours in a geographical, local sense? I think that's a really important question. And I don't have easy answers or many answers to offer at the moment. I think probably part of the answer at the moment is get help. So there are people around, whether it's from elsewhere in the Church of England, whether it's from an organisation like London City Mission, who might be able to say to us, actually, if you want to reach people who look very different to you, these are some of the changes that you might need to consider. That might be quite a painful conversation for us to hear, to be honest. But maybe that's part of how we begin thinking that through.
Okay. Okay, cool. So, and then, going even further forward, would a long-term plan be that St Barnabas might plant churches in the future? Is that still a hope and a plan?
Yeah, it was interesting. In your profile document that you put together for prospective vicars to have a read through, that was mentioned as an area of that had been something that St Barnabas had kind of planted with a hope that we might be involved in planting again, and that was up for discussion, I think, was the way that the profile talks about it. I think there's lots to think about with that. I think initially we're probably not at the point where we're ready to think about planting again ourselves. I think we are probably at a point where we need to kind of regather ourselves and refocus for what the next stage of our life might look like and might be. Planting might be part of that conversation, but I don't want to assume that it will be necessarily. But it might be that we want to think about, even if we can't plant ourselves, are there ways in which we could help, support, equip, encourage other churches who are looking to plant or who have planted recently? I mean, we can support planting without necessarily having to be the kind of planting church. So that might be part of the conversation as well. Okay. And also, I think maybe the planting commitments, I'll just throw this out there for the moment, but maybe part of the conversation around planting is not necessarily about, do we want to plant new churches, but what would it look like for us to begin thinking about new ministries? Are there new things that we could start that aren't necessarily planting, but are looking to develop and grow a particular aspect and part of the church? So it's the same kind of instinct to want to think about something new, but maybe it's saying we're not quite able to kind of think about planting. That's too big a thing, but there might be kind of smaller ways that we can think about kind of, mini plants, as it were.
Yeah. That sort of instinct of getting out there.
Yeah, exactly. That's right.
And then what about a more general question? I've been at St Barnabas from the beginning, so 10 years now, and obviously some people have come and gone in that time, and some people have gone. And do you envisage any change to the relationship with Grace Church? I know you've obviously just come from there. Is there anything there?
Yeah, that's. I don't think, as far as I'm aware, that there are any imminent changes kind of that are going to happen within the next kind of 6 to 12 months, that kind of thing. I think one thing that I'm keen to do and that I need to do is that I'm not really aware of what the St Barnabas Grace Church relationship is like from the St Barnabas end. So I think I need to, kind of experience it a bit before I've got kind of concrete things that I'm ready to kind of say this is what I think, if that makes sense. I've got a couple of ideas in mind, but at this stage I think I just need to live what our relationship with Grace Church is like and get a bit of a fix on it.
Okay, cool. And I suppose, is there any questions you wish we had asked you that we haven't asked you? Anything you really wanted to say that?
I think, if I haven't said it already, I'm just really excited to be here and to be with you. And I'm praying that the next however many years would really serve to grow the kingdom and to grow the church. That's what I'm looking forward to doing with you and amongst you. So yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to be here. It's been such a strange start. At the moment, I'm just really looking forward to seeing you in person, and that's going to be great.
It'll be elbow bumps.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's baby steps at the moment, but I'm really looking forward to starting with you, for real, not just online.
Great. Okay. Thank you so much, Nat.
Not at all.